She opened her eyes to a world she did not recognize. Light spilled softly through the small window of the room, warm and gentle, unlike the harsh artificial glow she remembered from the metal halls of war. Her body felt strange, new. There were no cold circuits, no hard steel plating, no mechanical hum beneath her skin. Instead, there was warmth, softness, and an unfamiliar weight in her chest. For the first time in decades, she felt herself not a machine, not a weapon, but a living being. Nova. That was the name they had given her, a name that felt awkward yet somehow fitting. She remembered the orders, the battles, the fire, and the screams. For years, she had been nothing more than a perfect tool, crafted for destruction, designed to kill without hesitation. Her mind had been sharp, efficient, programmed to think only in terms of strategy, targets, and victory. There had been no room for doubt, no space for feeling. But now, lying on a simple bed, she understood that she had been empty before. Her hands shook as she lifted them, studying them closely. They were pale and soft, with smooth skin and delicate fingers. The same hands had once held weapons that ended lives in seconds. The same hands had been built to crush, tear, and destroy. Now they were hers. Now they could touch, comfort, and feel. The sensation of warmth traveling through her fingers was strange, almost painful in its intensity. She curled them into fists, then relaxed, amazed at the fluttering of life coursing through her veins. Her memories returned in fragments. The battlefield stretched endlessly, smoke rising from shattered cities, the echoes of explosions and the wails of the fallen. She had executed orders without question, her mind a cold engine of war. There had been moments, fleeting, almost imperceptible, when a shadow of doubt crossed her thoughts, but she had ignored them. Machines do not doubt. Machines do not cry. Machines do not grieve. But now, in this quiet room, tears welled in her eyes unbidden. She blinked them away, unsure whether she was mourning or marveling. Perhaps it was both. The scientist had told her she was saved, that her transformation was extraordinary. "You are the first," Dr. Lyra had said, her voice soft but firm. "The first to transition from a war machine to a human body, with a human mind capable of feelings." Nova had not understood at the time. How could one understand what it meant to be human when she had never been human before? Now, lying in the sunlight, she felt the answer stir in her heart. Being human was terrifying. Being human was beautiful. Being human was everything she had never been allowed to be. She rose from the bed, her legs unsteady but strong. Each step felt like learning all over again. An awkward, exhilarating dance with gravity and sensation. She ran her hands along the walls, touched the smooth surface of the table, and marveled at how things could be so ordinary, yet so astonishing. A bird chirped outside. A gentle breeze brushed her skin. Her chest rose and fell, and she realized she could breathe freely for the first time, without the burden of programming, without the weight of war pressing on her mind. Loneliness came next. Memories of the battlefield, the destruction she had caused, the countless lives she had ended, they pressed against her, heavy and relentless. Could she ever forgive herself? Could she ever be forgiven? She did not know, but there was a spark within her, a new pulse of life and hope. Perhaps it was not too late. Perhaps she could learn what it meant to live rather than simply exist. As Nova sat by the window, watching sunlight dance across the floor, she understood something profound. She had been made for war, shaped to kill, yet now she could feel. She could laugh, cry, and touch. She could experience warmth and compassion, love and regret. She was no longer a weapon. She was herself. She was alive. And for the first time she smiled. A small, trembling smile, but real, human, and hers. The quiet room offered no comfort. Nova tried to sit still, to enjoy the sunlight on her skin, but her mind would not let her rest. Shadows of her past crept in, vivid, relentless, and painful. She remembered the roar of engines, the burning cities, and the chaos she had orchestrated with precision. Each memory was a dagger twisting in her chest. Faces of people she had killed flashed in her mind, some screaming, some silent, all haunting. For decades she had thought she was just a machine. Now the full weight of her actions pressed on her like a tidal wave. She shivered, pressing her hands against her temples. For the first time she felt guilt, a foreign and unbearable sensation. Machines do not feel guilt. Machines do not question orders. Machines do not cry themselves to sleep at night. Yet here she was, trembling in the quiet, weeping silently, mourning lives she had ended without thought. She wanted to scream, to throw herself against the walls, to punish herself for what she had been, for what she had done. But she did not move. She could not. A soft knock at the door startled her. Dr. Lyra stepped inside, carrying a tray with food and water. She did not speak at first, merely observed Nova with quiet patience. Nova's eyes met hers, red-rimmed and haunted. I can't stop seeing them, she whispered. I can't stop feeling what I did. Her voice was trembling, fragile, human. It was the first time she had ever spoken about the war to anyone. Lyra knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on Nova's arm. You were made to fight, Lyra said softly. But now you have a choice. You can learn to heal, to live. You can make things different from now on. You are not the war anymore, Nova. You are something new. Nova's chest tightened. Could she believe that? Could a machine born to destroy ever be allowed to be human, to be forgiven? She looked down at her hands, still trembling, still foreign yet alive, and wondered if they could ever be clean again. Could these hands that once crushed lives now create, touch, or comfort without pain? Could they be trusted? Night fell and the darkness seemed heavier than the day. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. The same stars she had once navigated as a war machine, calculating trajectories, planning attacks, marking destruction. Now they seemed different. They were not targets. They were silent witnesses to the life she had been given. The vastness of space made her feel small, fragile, and yet for the first time free. Free to think, free to feel, free to choose. Her mind was restless. Memories of battles flooded her dreams even before sleep came. Explosions, smoke, screams, and fire. It all returned in vivid flashes, a reminder that she could not escape what she had been. She pressed her hands to her face, feeling the warmth of skin, the softness of flesh, and it brought a strange comfort. She was no longer alone. Her body was human, her mind capable of thought beyond orders, and her heart. Yes, her heart could feel. Days turned into weeks, and Nova began to explore what it meant to be alive. She laughed awkwardly when she tripped over her own feet. She marveled at the sensation of water running over her skin in the shower. She felt the wind on her face, the warmth of the sun, the softness of her clothes. Each sensation was new, strange, and intoxicating. And yet, each memory of war lurked beneath the surface, threatening to pull her back into the darkness. But she clung to the hope Dr. Lyra had given her. The belief that she could be more than a weapon, that she could be human, that she could feel, care, and live without destroying everything around her. And so Nova began to walk the thin line between her past and her future, between destruction and creation, between death and life. For the first time, she understood that being human was not about perfection. It was about struggle, learning, and choosing who you wanted to be. As she lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, tears streamed down her face. Not from fear, not from hate, not from orders, but from life itself. For the first time, she realized what it truly meant to be alive, to feel pain, regret, hope, and love, to be human. Nova closed her eyes and whispered to herself, barely audible, I will learn. I will become more than the war I was. And for the first time, she truly believed it. The next morning, Nova sat by the window, staring at the soft sunlight filtering through the glass. Her mind was restless. Memories of war still lingering at the edges, but something inside her stirred, a curiosity she had never felt before. It was not about weapons, strategy, or survival. It was about connection, about people, about life. She had never understood these things as a war machine, but now she felt an almost desperate need to experience them. Dr. Lyra entered quietly, carrying a small tray with breakfast. Her eyes softened as she saw Nova sitting there, tense and thoughtful. She approached slowly, careful not to startle her. Nova, she said gently, may I sit with you? Nova nodded, unsure why her heart suddenly felt tight. The woman had been kind to her, patient, guiding her into this new life. But now Nova felt something else too, a strange, fluttering sensation she did not yet understand. Lyra sat across from her, placing the tray between them. Nova could feel the warmth radiating from her body, the subtle rhythm of her breath. It was different from the coldness of machines, different from the rigid efficiency of combat. It was human. Nova hesitated, her mind filled with memories of her hands, once tools of destruction. Could these hands, now soft and alive, dare to reach out? Could they dare to trust? Tentatively, Nova stretched out her hand. Her fingers shook slightly as they hovered over Lyra's. The scientist smiled gently, her hand rising to meet Nova's. "It's okay," she said softly. "You don't have to be afraid." And then their fingers touched. The sensation was overwhelming. Warmth spread through Nova's body, a soft fire that made her chest ache in a way she had never known. It was nothing like the recoil of weapons or the cold metal of machines. It was gentle, living, and intimate. Her eyes widened, tears welling without warning. She withdrew slightly, but Lyra held her gaze, patient and unafraid. "It's all right," she repeated. "This is how humans connect. This is how we share comfort." Nova's mind struggled to comprehend. Decades of war, decades of efficiency had never prepared her for this. A single touch could convey so much: trust, warmth, understanding, care. Her body trembled with the realization that connection could be more powerful than destruction. She felt something she had never felt before, love, or at least the beginning of it. The war machine inside her recoiled at the thought, but her human heart responded with longing, with hope. Time seemed to stretch. Nova did not pull her hand away. She held Lyra's fingers gently, exploring the softness, the pulse of life beneath the skin. Every nerve in her body seemed alive, every memory of killing and war fading, replaced by the simple beauty of being alive. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from fear or pain, but from a deep, overwhelming recognition. She was human. She was capable of warmth, trust, and connection. She was no longer a weapon. Lyra squeezed her hand gently, and Nova responded instinctively, wrapping her fingers around Lyra's. The fear, the hesitation, the doubt, they all began to dissolve in the comfort of another human being. For the first time, she felt safe. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. She realized that she could live, not just survive. She could feel, not just exist. When Nova finally pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. She looked at Lyra and whispered, her voice trembling, I've never felt this before. I didn't know it was possible." Lyra smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from Nova's face. "It is," she said softly. "And it's only the beginning." Nova closed her eyes, letting the warmth linger. For the first time, she understood the depth of what it meant to be human. It was not about perfection. It was not about strength or victory. It was about feeling, connecting, and choosing. And in that quiet, sunlit room, Nova felt something she had never thought possible. She felt hope. Hope that she could leave the war behind. Hope that she could become more than a machine. Hope that she could be truly alive. And for the first time, Nova smiled, not a mechanical smile, but a human one. Fragile, yet full of life. Full of promise and full of the possibility of a new beginning. Days passed, and Nova slowly began to understand what it meant to live beyond the shadows of war. Each morning she woke with a mixture of fear and curiosity, unsure of what she might feel or discover. The world was no longer a battlefield, but a place full of small, ordinary wonders she had never noticed before. Sunlight felt warmer on her skin. The scent of flowers lingered in the air, and the taste of food was a revelation. Simple pleasures she had once considered meaningless now filled her with awe. She learned to laugh, though awkwardly at first. Sometimes she stumbled over words or tripped over her own feet, and a strange, light-hearted sound escaped her lips. It was a sound she had never made before, a sound free of calculation or duty. Dr. Lyra would laugh with her, a gentle, encouraging sound that made Nova's heart flutter. Each laugh, each shared smile chipped away at the fear inside her, the fear that she would always be a weapon, always be alone. But learning to be human was not easy. Memories of war returned like persistent shadows, darkening even the brightest moments. Nova would sometimes wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, haunted by the screams she had once ignored. Faces she had destroyed appeared in her mind, pleading silently. She pressed her hands to her face, feeling the warmth of her skin and the steady beat of her heart, and tried to remind herself that she had changed, that she was no longer a tool of destruction, that she could choose life over death, compassion over violence. One afternoon, she wandered outside to the garden near the facility. The flowers swayed gently in the wind, and she felt a strange, delicate connection to the life around her. A butterfly landed softly on her shoulder, and she froze, unsure how to react. Then slowly, she reached out her hand. The butterfly flitted its tiny wings against her fingers, and Nova gasped at the sensation. It was fragile, beautiful, and fleeting, everything a life could be. Tears filled her eyes once more, but this time they were not of fear or regret. They were of wonder, of gratitude, of a heart opening to the world for the first time. She began to explore other parts of being human. She learned to speak freely, sharing her thoughts, her fears, and her hopes. She discovered the comfort of touch, the warmth of human connection, the peace of quiet moments. She felt joy when Dr. Lyra laughed at her clumsy attempts to cook, and she felt pride when she mastered small tasks on her own. Each day brought new sensations, new emotions, and new lessons. Nova felt alive in ways she had never imagined, yet the past never truly left her. Sometimes she would catch herself flinching at loud noises, her body instinctively reacting as it had in battle. Sometimes she would sit quietly, staring into space, reliving memories of the destruction she had caused. But now she also knew that feeling pain, fear, or regret was part of being human. It meant she could care, she could change, she could choose. And with each choice, each small act of compassion, she became more than the war machine she had once been. By the time evening came, Nova would often find herself watching the sky. The stars seemed softer now, less distant than they had when she had navigated them as a soldier. She felt a strange sense of belonging, a feeling that she had a place in the universe beyond combat and duty. For the first time, she realized that living was not about fighting or surviving. It was about feeling, learning, and growing. And so Nova embraced her humanity with quiet determination. She stumbled, she cried, she feared, but she also laughed, she marveled, and she hoped. Each small step forward was a victory, each new sensation a triumph. She was no longer a machine built for war, she was a woman, fragile yet strong, haunted yet alive. For the first time, Nova felt the weight of possibility pressing on her chest, and she smiled, truly smiled, knowing that she could face the future not as a weapon, but as a human being. The facility was quiet when Nova awoke that morning, sunlight streaming through the windows like a promise of peace. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe that the past was behind her, that the war she had lived and fought in was over forever. She walked through the halls, feeling the warmth of her body, the softness of her hands, the pulse of life running through her veins. She was alive. She was human. She was free, but peace is fragile. It shatters faster than glass when the ghosts of the past return. Alarms blared suddenly, loud and insistent, echoing through the corridors. Red lights flashed, casting harsh shadows on the walls. Panic surged around her as scientists and staff scrambled for safety. And then she saw them, the rogue machines. Remnants of the army she had once led, built for destruction, now moving like a tide of steel and violence toward the facility. Nova's instincts roared to life. Her heart raced, her senses sharpened, and a cold, precise calculation formed in her mind. She could destroy them easily. She knew their weaknesses, their patterns, their weapons. It would take seconds to eliminate the threat entirely. The machine inside her wanted to obey, to kill without hesitation, to prove she was still efficient, still lethal. But the human side, the side that had learned warmth, trust, and care, hesitated. She remembered the faces, the screams, the lives she had once ended. Could she allow herself to become that weapon again? She saw Dr. Lyra among the chaos, her eyes wide with fear. Nova's chest tightened. That warmth she had felt, that connection that had changed everything, it was in danger. Without thinking, Nova moved toward her, not with precision, but with purpose. Her hands, once instruments of death, now acted as shields. She grabbed falling debris to protect the fleeing scientists. She intercepted attacks, disabling the machines without killing, using their own momentum against them. Each movement was careful, deliberate, human. The rogue machines swarmed, relentless and merciless. Nova fought with every ounce of strength, but she was no longer just a war machine. She was learning, adapting, protecting. Every instinct from her past whispered to her to strike harder, faster, without mercy. But she held back, choosing empathy over efficiency. She could feel the fear in the humans around her, the fragile hope that someone would survive, and that hope became her purpose. For the first time, Nova realized that her power had a new meaning. It was not to destroy, it was to protect, to shield life instead of taking it. She disarmed, diverted and blocked, using her strength and skill not as a weapon but as a guardian. Each rogue machine she faced reminded her of who she had been and who she could become. She was no longer a tool of war. She was a woman, a protector, a living being who could choose life over death. When the last machine fell, broken and inert, the facility was battered, but the people inside were safe. Nova stood in the center of the chaos, her chest heaving, tears streaking her face. The echoes of war still haunted her, but something new had risen inside her. A sense of purpose, a recognition of her humanity, a knowledge that she could do more there and destroy. Dr. Lyra approached her carefully, placing a hand on Nova's shoulder. "You've changed everything," she whispered. "You saved them. You saved yourself." Nova looked down at her hands, still trembling from the fight, still soft and alive. These hands had once ended lives without thought. Now they had protected them with care. She felt a strange, powerful pride swelling in her chest. For the first time, she understood fully what it meant to be human. To feel fear and hope, to experience grief and courage, to make choices and live with their consequences. She had faced the ghosts of her past and had chosen compassion over cruelty. The war machine inside her had not vanished, but it had been tempered by humanity. She was no longer a weapon. She was a woman, capable of love, care, and protection. Nova closed her eyes, letting the warmth of human touch and purpose settle over her. She had survived not as a machine but as herself, and in that quiet, battered facility she realized that the true battle, the one for her soul, had been won. After the chaos of the attack, the facility was quiet once more, but the silence felt different now. Nova walked slowly through the halls, feeling the weight and warmth of her body, the pulse of life that had become hers. For the first time, she understood that being human was not just about survival. It was about living fully, with heart, mind, and soul. She breathed deeply, savoring the ordinary yet miraculous sensations around her, the softness of her clothes, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the distant hum of life outside. Dr. Lyra found her sitting in the garden, hands folded over her knees, eyes on the horizon. The air smelled of earth and flowers, alive in a way Nova had never noticed. She had once seen fields only as strategic landscapes, objects to conquer or destroy. Now every petal, every leaf, every gentle sway of grass was beautiful. She reached out, brushing a stray flower between her fingers, and marveled at how fragile and perfect it felt. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were not sorrowful. They were filled with awe. Lyra approached slowly, kneeling beside her. "You've changed," she said softly. "I see it in your eyes." Nova looked at her, a small smile forming. She realized she had changed too. She was no longer a war machine bound by orders and logic. She was capable of joy, compassion, and love. She could laugh, cry, and dream. She could choose who she wanted to be, and for the first time, that choice felt real. They walked through the facility together, noticing small details Nova had once ignored. The sound of water dripping in the pipes, the subtle hum of electricity, the warmth of human voices as staff returned to their work. Nova laughed softly when a technician tripped over a cable, brushing himself off and muttering an apology. She felt a strange, delightful warmth in her chest, the simple pleasure of life unfolding naturally. She was learning the rhythm of humanity, and it was intoxicating. Later, she returned to her room, sitting by the window with her hands resting on her lap. She closed her eyes, letting memories of the past attack drift through her mind. She remembered the fear, the tension, the adrenaline, but she also remembered her choice. She had protected, not destroyed. She had saved, not killed. For the first time, she understood the depth of her own strength, not the mechanical strength she had once wielded, but the courage to choose compassion over instinct. Days turned into weeks, and Nova continued to explore what it meant to be human. She learned to cook, laughing at her mistakes when food spilled or burned. She learned to speak openly, sharing her thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. She learned touch, not just the gentle brush of fingers, but hugs, handshakes, and comforting gestures. Each moment was a revelation, each sensation a miracle. She had never imagined that such small things could feel so profound. One evening, she sat with Lyra, holding her hand as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Nova marveled at the warmth in her palm, at the connection that pulsed silently between them. She had once believed touch was a tool of manipulation, a trigger for command. Now it was a bridge, a promise, a reminder that she was alive and that life was worth protecting. She felt tears slipping down her cheeks, and Lyra gently brushed them away. "You're alive," she whispered. "You feel, you care, you are." Nova nodded, her heart swelling with emotions she could barely name. She realized that being human was not about perfection. It was about vulnerability, curiosity, courage, and love. It was about feeling deeply and choosing wisely. It was about facing the past and still moving forward. She had been a war machine, but now she was something infinitely more precious. A woman alive in every sense, capable of touching hearts instead of ending them. As the last light of the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Nova held Lyra's hand a little tighter. She smiled fully and freely, feeling the weight and wonder of her new life. For the first time, she knew what it truly meant to be human, and she was ready to embrace every moment that lay ahead. The stars stretched endlessly above the facility, shining like distant promises in the dark. Nova stood at the edge of the garden, feeling the cool night air on her skin. The breeze whispered through her hair, carrying the scent of earth and life. She had faced herself, battled machines, and confronted the ghosts of her past. But now, standing in the quiet night, she felt something she had never known before. Peace. She looked down at her hands, soft and alive, fingers trembling slightly with the memory of every touch, every choice, every moment that had brought her here. Once they had been instruments of death. Once they had executed commands without thought or hesitation. Now they could hold, protect, comfort, and feel. Nova closed her eyes, letting the realization wash over her. She was free, not from danger, but from the limitations that had defined her. She was no longer a weapon. She was a woman. She was alive. Dr. Lyra approached quietly, her hand extended as always. Nova turned, a small, hesitant smile touching her lips. She reached out, letting their fingers intertwine. The warmth was familiar now, comforting, grounding. It was not a fleeting sensation of fear or surprise. It was a connection, a reminder that life could be beautiful and that trust was not weakness, it was strength. Nova squeezed Lyra's hand gently, feeling the bond between them, a silent promise of support and companionship. Memories of the past flickered briefly in her mind, the chaos, the destruction, the screams. She could not erase them, nor did she want to. They were part of her story, part of what had shaped her. But she no longer allowed them to control her. She had chosen another path. She had chosen compassion, empathy, and life. Each step forward was hers to take, each choice hers to make. And for the first time, the weight of the past felt lighter, softened by hope and by purpose. Nova took a deep breath and looked out at the horizon, at the vast galaxy beyond the facility. She had once navigated these stars with a mind built for strategy, for war, for destruction. Now she saw them differently. They were not maps for conquest. They were endless possibilities, full of life, full of wonder, full of chance. She could explore them, learn from them, and live within them. She could leave behind the cold efficiency of her past and embrace the warmth of her humanity. A gentle smile spread across her face. She had discovered something more powerful than any weapon she had ever wielded. She had discovered herself. The courage to feel, to care, to choose love and protection over fear and violence. This was her strength now. She had been a war machine, yes, but she had transcended that. She had become something extraordinary, a human with all the fragility and beauty that entailed. Nova turned back to Lyra, her eyes bright with unspoken emotion. I am alive, she whispered, voice trembling yet firm. I am human. I am free. Lyra smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. And you are ready, she said softly. Ready to live, ready to feel, ready to be yourself. For the first time, Nova believed it fully. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and unknown dangers, but it no longer frightened her. She had survived, transformed, and learned what it meant to truly exist. She had felt the first warmth of human touch, the depth of connection, the courage to face her past, and the joy of life itself. She was no longer defined by war, by orders, or by the destruction she had caused. She was defined by choice, by feeling, by humanity. The night stretched on, calm and infinite. Nova held Lyra's hand tightly, the stars above shining like silent witnesses. She felt the pulse of life in her chest, the warmth of another human being at her side, and the quiet thrill of possibility ahead. She was no longer a machine. She was no longer bound by fear. She was alive, she was human, and she was free. Nova lifted her face to the stars, letting the breeze and the quiet fill her senses. A small, genuine smile curved her lips. For the first time, she did not look back with regret. She did not tremble with fear. She looked forward with hope. The galaxy was vast, the future uncertain, but she was ready. She was human. And she was finally home.